Hi, welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to be completing this update standing up because my studio is an absolute disaster. We got the smoke alarm fixed. Turns out it has a backup battery. It needed to be replaced. Had no idea. But so that's fixed, but in the process we had to shift things around and it was already a disaster because I was in con crunch mode. So I am standing. If this works, maybe I will do it more often. I kind of like the freedom of movement, I guess. But I am having a little difficulty getting my camera to focus appropriately, so hopefully this isn't blurry. So you also might have noticed that I didn't update on Friday or Saturday like I normally do. And that is because I was riding the struggle bus. I spent all of my free time last week trying to put together a wig in a way that I have never done before. And I went through 3 wigs before I got it the way I wanted it, which you might be able to see in the background. But it was very, very exhausting, both physically and mentally. Really wanted to wait so that I could say, I'm done. Sailor Cosmos is done. She's finished. We're done. No more. That's it. It's over. No more. I feel like I need confetti or something because it was, I don't know, was it 5 months now? 5 months of continuous work on this. Spending all of my free time trying to put this thing together, and I finally did it. And I tried it on for the very first time yesterday. Everything. The whole kit and caboodle, including this massive wig that I made. And I will put the video up here or here, whichever side makes sense, so that you can see it's done and it is a monstrosity, but I mean that in the best possible way. It's just a lot of costume. It's a lot of wig. It's a lot of sparkle and embellishment, and it is just a lot of everything. And I love wearing it. It feels magical. I do have to say, I'm actually really surprised at how comfortable it wound up being. The corset's very comfortable, the skirt's comfortable. I don't feel the wings at all. Like, I feel them when my husband initially slides them into my corset, and then I don't feel them at all. The only pain point that I had was in the shoes. Some of the Worbla leaves on top sort of bowed in a little bit whenever I was heat forming them, so I had to go through and correct some of that. And the wig is really comfortable. I essentially made a hat with hair. So this update will be specifically around the wig and my trials. So hopefully it's not too terribly long, but I did want to detail how I made it. I did post a short both on Instagram and YouTube showing like a condensed process for how I made it. Yeah, that's like 4 days worth of work condensed into a minute. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then my next update will probably be around MegaCon Orlando, which I'll be going to this weekend, and I'll be competing this weekend with this costume. If you're going to be at MegaCon Orlando, make sure to say hi if you see me. So I think my next video will probably be like a little update on that, and then it's time to move on to my next project. And I have 2 that I have in the works. So I'm trying to finish at least one of those in time for MomoCon, which is in May, and then hopefully I can finally turn my attention to Elishnorn. But honestly, the first thing I need to do is clean up the disaster of my studio. If you enjoy these updates or want to keep up on my progress or anything else that I post here, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Make sure to check me out on Instagram. I do post more regularly there. Or do I now? I actually might post about the same, about once a week. And yeah, so let's go on into it. So my week started off fine. So I had this lace front Arta wig. I purposely purchased a short wig because my thought was that by buying a short wig I could sculpt it into a pigtail base and not worry about like having to cut off a bunch of extra hair or anything like that. So I started off with this lace front wig, and I needed to create a base. Now this base did journey through all 3 wigs, so the base is fine. It did take a little adjustment once I tried it on the first base. So I guess I should explain it. So there's things called hardtop wigs. These hardtop wigs, I see other people make them all the time, and they often have like a metal structure on the inside that's the shape of the head, and then there's like cotton quilt batting or something like that as padding, and then people build the hair up. A lot of times it's just glued into shape so it doesn't move, and it looks very clean and smooth. They make their own hairlines, and that's what I wanted to try to make. However, I can't find any tutorials on how to do this at all. At least when I started, I couldn't find anything. I did find one small Instagram channel, which if I can find them again, I'll make sure to put them down in the description. They at least showed their process. There's no real explanation. It's done, you know, on an Instagram short. But that was the most I've ever seen. It is so hard to find any sort of how-to on these hardtop wigs. I don't know. I guess it's an industry secret that no one wants to share, but I couldn't find anything. I did watch that one person's short and saw them using that metal piece. It's like a 1-inch strip of metal with like holes in it, and then cotton batting to essentially make a wig cap. I couldn't figure out what on earth that metal piece was, and so I decided to use Worbla instead, because I already had Worbla on hand, and I thought, you know, Worbla's lightweight, it's flexible, it's sturdy, so maybe it'll work the same way as metal. And so I created a band that goes around the top of my head, and I created another band that goes around the back, and then I created a strip that goes over the top so that the pigtails have a place to anchor, and then I did one right down the middle. I had that base, so then for the pigtail support, I got some coupling, PVC pipe coupling from Lowe's. So it's just like a little connector that is threaded on each side, and then I got caps for each side, for each end. So I screwed those together. One side I pushed through the Worbla and then put Worbla on it to anchor it in, and the other side I just screwed in because I wanted this to be modular so that I could screw off the buns and take the pigtails off if I needed to. So I have this Worbla base with these little alien antenna looking things popping off. So I took the lace front wig that I had, and it happened to have enough gap between the wefts that I could just slide it on top of this base and have the PVC pipe sticking out through the hair. So that was perfect. However, that wig, I didn't realize when I purchased it, it had nice long bangs that I would be able to style, but the back was, each weft was only about an inch long. So I had an inch long hair, inch long, going up in rows. It was kind of ugly. So I could create my pigtail part easily with the bangs, but the back didn't have one. So I found Sarah Spaceman's tutorial that she posted recently for her Holiday Matsuri Hatsune Miku cosplay, where she created her own hairline by having a fabric base and then gluing wefts. So you would glue the wefts down this way and then fold them over and steam it to create like a fake hairline. It didn't work for me. Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work at all. Like, it started to at first, and then it was just a disaster. So I found another tutorial, which I'll link below, where people made their own wefts with glue. They took groups of hair and glued the end and then like trimmed that straight, and then put that down, like then glued that down a flesh colored strip of fabric on the back of the wig to create a pigtail part. So I did that. It started off good, and again, partway through it started to look like a disaster. The glue wasn't sticking. To be fair, I didn't have the right kind of glue. I tried to use non-toxic glues, and because I use non-toxic glues, a lot of times they're not glues that set immediately, and I can't use hot glue on it because my hot glue discolored the wig, because it's white and the glue isn't necessarily clear. So I messed up my lace front wig, but I refuse to throw it away because I think I can cut it into pieces and sew it together with something else at a later date. So I then was like, I tore it all apart. I'm like, I can't, this isn't working. So I took the base out and threw the wig aside, and I had this Sailor Cosmos wig that I made last year, which looks fine, but I just wanted something that was a bit more competition worthy, a bit cleaner, and I really, really liked the hardtop wigs, how they're all glued into their shape, and it, you know, it just looks better, and then I don't have to worry about accidentally pulling pieces of the pigtail out. So I had this pigtail wig construction I had made for Cosmos, and that was my backup. So I wasn't touching it because if all else fails, I had that created. I could work with it. So I took my Neo Queen Serenity wig from my Neo Queen Serenity photo shoot I did a couple of years ago now. It's not my favorite wig. It's a little yellow, like it's like a, I think I called it titanium blonde. So it's a little yellow, but to me it looks a little green. So I took that and I completely dismantled it. And I ripped off the hot glue that I used to stub it, and I just ripped it apart because I needed to figure out how could I take this pigtail wig and turn it into this hardtop wig and use my Worbla and PVC piping structure within. And if it worked on this wig, my original thought was then I would take apart my previous Cosmos wig and copy the technique over. But at some point in time, as I was working on the Neo Queen Serenity wig, I had decided that maybe I could paint it white or layer white hair on it and it would work, because I didn't want to do the work all over again because it took a long time. So what did I do? I guess I should go on to that. So what did I do? So essentially I took this pigtail wig, and I had originally stubbed it, which is where you cut the pigtails off and you hot glue the stubs. So that the hair doesn't fall through, and then you can like slide buns and stuff on top of it. So I cut out all of that hot glue and let it fall. There's a lot of hair inside of the pigtail wig, so you have the wefts that follow the hairline making that pigtail part, and then there's wefts on the inside that fill it in so that when you pull it into the pigtail you can't see through the hair and see the hairline of the wig cap or whatever through. So all that hair was too bulky. Like you pull it together and it's like this big around. The PVC pipe, if I put that through the middle, it would then be that big around. So I cut out all of the hair on the inside of the wig, leaving just the wefts that were sewn in the direction of the pigtail part, and then the wefts that were sewn around the hairline. And so I cut all that out, and I used fabric fusion glue to glue all that down and like put just a layer of glue down. And I took pillow fluff that I then smushed all onto that. The pillow fluff had two purposes. One was to hide the wefts in the wig cap. So if you happen to get a little gapping in the hair, you may not notice it because it's white. And then it also gave a support structure for the pigtail hair to lay on and poof it up. Since I removed all that hair on the inside, there was nothing giving that hair structure. So I did that, and I used my Got2b hairspray to sort of like create a sticky base that all that pillow fluff then stuck to. And then when I layered the hair back on top of it, the hair would then stick to that hairspray. It is hairspray, but it's practically glue. It is super strong hairspray. So it worked really well. So then I spent a lot of time with a tiny, gosh, that's got hair in it, a tiny little comb. I would take that comb with a little bit of Got2b spiking glue, which is really strong hair cream or gel, and I would brush it. First I brushed it on the inside of the weft, and then I brushed it on the outside hairline. I put a pretty thick coat on the hairline, and then I brushed it up, and then I laid it on top of that sticky pillow fluff, and then pinned it in place. And then sometimes I would take a hairdryer to set it, and sometimes I wouldn't, just depended on what else I needed to do. If I needed to like take a break or something, or sometimes I found that like it was best to keep it wet while I worked on a big section and then quickly hit it with a hairdryer so that it would hold. And then I would walk away for a bit and let it finish drying the rest of the way. It just seemed to work better that way. So I did that all around the pigtails and got my hairline in place. And that's why I was like, well, I don't want to redo all this because it took me an entire day. So why don't I see if I can layer hair on top of it to make it look white and then have that blonde color sort of giving dimension to the hair so it's not just straight white. So I took some white hair from an Amazon wig I had cut up earlier to like weave into the short wig. And I used fabric glue and glued that on top. And not gonna lie, that would have worked. It would have worked to do that. However, I decided that I didn't really like the way it looked. So as like my last Hail Mary, I took out my airbrush and I wonder if I can airbrush this white. So I tried that, it didn't work. So I decided I needed to dismantle my Cosmos wig, which was an absolute terrifying thing to do because that was it. It was Friday and I only, like I can only work on this in the evenings and on the weekends. So like it's Friday evening. The contest is just over a week away at this point. There's no way I could get another pigtail wig in place. And the worst part is earlier in the week, I was going to order a new white pigtail wig as a backup from Arda. It's discontinued. So that's not even an option. Not even an option. So I just do what I normally do and dive in head first. So I took my Cosmos wig and I ripped off the styrofoam hearts and I cut out the hot glue that was holding the pigtails into place and did exactly what I did to that Neo Queen Serenity wig. I cut out all the inner hair, I added pillow fluff, and I just worked all day easing the hair into the pigtail shape and around that fluff. And once it was laid the way I wanted it and it had set, I added a little extra got to be glued spiking gel just to really hold it in place. And then I hit it hard with the hairspray. My goal is that it shouldn't feel like wig hair anymore. It should feel like plastic. I didn't want to use actual glue because my thought was if I use things that can wash out, if I mess it up, I can just wash it and do it again. So it was giving me a second chance and made me a little less nervous about doing this. So I sprayed it all down and I let it dry overnight. And hallelujah, it worked. It worked. So I took that opportunity to then try the wig on because I hadn't yet, but the Worbla structure fit my head. I molded it to my head, so it should be fine, right? Well, it wasn't. It hit about here, which I do have a photo of. So the thing with the pigtail wig from Arda is it has two little hair combs in the bottom. So when you put the wig on, you take the hair combs and pull it down and it stretches that wig out and it hooks down into your hair. So the way I have the Worbla structure into this wig is this wig I actually had to cut holes into the netting and slide the PVC pipes through, and I had to do a couple of times and stitch up old holes because it took me a bit to get it even with the part down the middle. And then I took those combs and I just looped them, like there's a comb in the front, I just put it under the Worbla in the front, and then the two in the back, I put it under the Worbla in the back. However, the Worbla fits me here, and I didn't think about that. So the wig didn't get stretched down to my hairline. So I had a little gap. My way of fixing this, since we don't see the back of the hair in the artwork, I decided to go ahead and sew in some wefts. So I have my pigtails from my other Cosmos wig. I cut those up into individual wefts and I layered them. I think there's 4 layered together, and I stitched them along the hairline. And then I also had it stitched behind the ear, skipped where the ear was, and then have it stitched at the sideburns. So she has these long curly bangs, and then she has these little long hairs here. So my thought was, you don't see the back of the artwork, so let's just blend all of this hair down in curls and then curl these wefts in the back and it'll be fine. So I cut them to about here and then curled them up. It looks just fine. It blended in nicely, and turns out when I wear the costume, you can't even see it. But at least my hairline is covered and it looks finished, so that's fine. And I curled those long. I cut those pieces a little longer on the sides. They cover those. Those cover the hairline behind the ear and in front of the ear. So anyway, so I did all of this and the base is done. Next, I needed to do the pigtails. So I did not reuse the pigtails from my previous Cosmos wig because I actually used most of what was left for all of that. So instead, I had purchased these pre-curled pigtail. My cat is desperate to be in here. I purchased these pre-curled pigtails from Arta that came on clips. And the way that these were attached on the clips is it's one piece, but it's a bunch of wefts sewn together in about an oval. And then this is woven through the oval so that the pigtail comes off the top and the sides. And normally you just clip those in. Well, I didn't want to just clip them in. My wig is now hard as a rock. So clips aren't going to work, and they just don't look as good as, or at least for a competition, as it would be if I finagled them. So I removed them from their clips and I sectioned them out into 3 pieces. They're pretty heavy and there's a lot of hair to them. So the first thing that I did was it had pieces that were about this long and then pieces that were really long. So I cut the wefts apart to where the short section was separated from the long section. And then there was still a ton of hair left in that long section. So I actually removed a few additional wefts from those and just tossed it aside. So I just have extra hair now. And there was an elastic band, which I don't think I have an extra of. There was an elastic band that came with, that was like looped through the oval, and that's what they like tied around the hair clip so it would stay in place. So I took that out and cut it into 2 pieces, and I sewed the short clump of wefts to one, and I sewed the long clump of wefts to the other and tied them into a knot. So I essentially had my individual pigtail pieces on hair ties that I made from the elastic band. So then I took that and I tied it over the PVC pipe stub of the wig. I did the long one first and then I did the short one second, and that gave it some nice dimension. And this also has the added benefit of being removable, because remember I said I wanted this to be modular, so doing it this way allows me to remove the pigtails at a later date. Alright, so pigtails done. Next was the messiest part, the hair buns. So the hair buns are a bit unique. So what I did with my first Cosmos wig is I took some styrofoam hearts, Frankensteined them together, wrapped hair around it, glued that onto the stub, and then glued a 3D printed bun shield onto the front of that. Finding that I didn't make the bun shield curved, so there was a gap, so I had to wrap additional hair around it to hide the gap. So to avoid that, and to save me the effort of having to physically carve styrofoam balls into the heart shape that I wanted, I decided to 3D print it. So I modeled a 3D heart that had a wide hole in it that the PVC pipe and extra hair could slide into. To avoid having the bun shield not fit right, I modeled it so that the bun shield was part of this heart structure. I just created a smaller stand in the middle that lifted the bun shield off of the front, so there was a gap between the bun shield and the heart, and that would allow me to wrap hair under the bun shield, making the bun shield look separate. I 3D printed that. There's a lot of trial and error trying to get the right size, but I made a pretty large heart. I took the rest of the hair that I had from my previous Cosmos wig and then this Amazon wig that I had and cut it up into individual clumps of hair. And I used my fabric glue on the ends of that to make my own like tiny little wefts, and then I let that dry overnight. And then the next day I took some hot glue and I would hot glue the ends of those wefts under the bun shield and then wrap it around the 3D printed heart and then used fabric glue to glue that in place, and used my hair dryer to set that glue so that I could keep working. It is so messy to do this. I have yet to figure out a better way. I get fabric glue over my hands. I'm constantly peeling it off because if you don't keep the dry glue off your hands, it messes up, like it gets stuck on the hair bun. It's just a disaster, but it works. Oh, I forgot to mention, I did spray paint the bun shield gold as well. That was just because I knew I was going to bedazzle it, and so if any part of it showed, then at least it would be gold. And I also have to say I did print these on draft, A, to save time because I did not have time for a 15-hour print for each bun shield, but also because when you print it on draft, you have wider gaps between the filaments. So this allowed like extra grooves for the glue to fit in, so I thought it would just be better for my later step whenever I glued the dome on. Anyway, that's why it's kind of a rough print. I wrapped it all in hair, and then I added pearls and gems all over the edge of the bun shield. And then I 3D printed the dome out of transparent clear filament. And I decided I really liked the sort of weird look that the clear filament gave. So I left it. I did some light sanding on the bottom, but I did not do anything else to the clear filament. And that's why we have like this sort of shiny, weird looking dome structure, but I like it. And I used Uga glue, which is a thing that I found out recently, and Surebonder to smack that thing right in the middle of the bun shield base. And I let that dry overnight. So how did I attach it to the top of the wig? So all I had to do was put a bunch of Surebonder in it and stick it on. Like literally that's it. I just put a bunch of Surebonder on the inside of the bun and slid it over the hair and the PVC pipe and held it in place for a few seconds until it was secure. So that's it. The way to remove these pigtails wound up being a little different in the end. Essentially, I wanted them to screw off the top, but that would be really messy against the hair and the pigtails, so I have to go into the base and pop off the Worbla cover that I put in that's covering up those PVC pipe and screw off the cap, and the buns will come off and the pigtails will come off. I don't have a video of that because I didn't want to mess up the wig before the competition, but after the competition I'll be happy to demonstrate that. But for now, I'm not touching it. And then I styled the bangs and just curled them and rolled them under, utilizing a tube of lipstick and a Fenty brow wax because I really need to invest in curlers and I still haven't yet, and I have literally been curling my cosplay wigs with tubes of lipstick and other makeup products for the past like 3 years. So yeah, that seems like a lot, and it was a lot, and it's a lot of work. I now understand why these type of wigs cost like $300 to $500 when you commission them, because that takes a lot of time and effort. And it's essentially 2 wigs put together at this point with all the stuff that I did to it. But it fits amazingly. It's essentially a hat, and it is balanced. So I just pop it on my head. All that weight, because it's kind of heavy, all that weight is on top of my head, and I can move around and I can spin around, and I don't even have to pin it in place, and it stays because the Worbla is molded to my head, and I actually somehow miraculously balanced it. So I do think I will, when I wear it, still try to put a couple of pins under the bangs, and I do want to put some wig tape on the edge of the hairline just in case, but I honestly don't think I need to. So yeah, so that is how I made my monstrous Cosmos wig. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments and I will answer. I try to get to them as soon as I can. It usually takes me a day or so, but I'm happy to discuss. And I hope my next wig creation isn't as complicated. But I thought putting this much effort into it will just give me extra points. I also forgot to mention I added a bunch of gold leaf to it for sparkle because I could. Because there's gold leaf everywhere in this costume. I need to add some to the pigtails, not that I mention it. But yeah, that's all that I had for you. My next and final update with Cosmos, at least for a while, is going to be next week after the convention and after the contest. So I will see you all in my next video. Bye!